Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture series on computer architecture and organization. So in this lecture we are going to see about some memory technologies which we are using nowadays under the unit 4, that is memory and IO organization. So if you see here in the last lecture we saw about what are all the levels in the memory hierarchy, and so this is a level 1, level 2, likewise it goes on. So this is the upper level and these are all the lower levels. So the information, if we found any information in this level 1, then that information we are calling that as a block. The access time for this information to be fetched from level 1 by the processor is very less compared to the access time that is being fetched from the lower levels by the processor. So in order to reduce the access time or keeping the access time for all the memory levels as level 1, then we need to transfer all the blocks that we are searching for. If it is available in the lower one, then it should be fetched from the in the lower one, then it should be fetched from the lower level and it should be placed in the upper level, so that the distance between the processor and the levels get reduced and the access time is also reduced. So these are all the shaded portions which show about this blocks or the line. So data are transferred between the two levels. We are just concentrating in this chapter about only the two level. The level that is closest to the processor is called as upper level, and the level that is little bit farther from the processor is lower level. And if you see the base of this memory hierarchy, the memories that are placed in the lower level are very big, but the access time by the processor is very slow. The memories that are very placed close to the processor will be very small, but it is very fast. So nowadays we are in the demand of both the large memory as well as the faster one. So in order to meet the requirement or in order to override the demand, we are going for this memory hierarchy. So here if you see, there are four primary technologies we are used nowadays in memory hierarchy. So the main memory is usually implemented with DRAM, that is the dynamic random access memory, while the levels that are closer to the processor are usually implemented with SRAM, that is the static random access memory. And if you see the cost of this DRAM, if the DRAM is less costly per bit than the SRAM, although it is substantially lower. Why the price difference arises in the sense the DRAM uses significantly a very less area per bit of memory, and DRAMs thus have very larger capacity for the same amount of silicon. The speed difference also arises from several factors. The third technology we are using is flash memory. This non-volatile memory is the secondary memory in the personal mobile devices we are using nowadays. The fourth technology is used to implement the largest and the slowest level in the hierarchy in servers, that is the magnetic disk. So if you see here, these are all the access times for the each and every technology, and these are all the cost per gigabyte in 2004. So if you see here, the DRAM is a very slower one, but the cost is very less because of this. Because it occupies a very less area per bit in the memory, and so that large amount of bits can be occupied in a single in an area of silicon. But at the same time, SRAM occupies a very larger space. Even though it occupies very space, it is very fast compared to DRAM. So each and every memory technology has its own advantage. Flash memory takes its own advantage in the area of personal mobile devices, and magnetic disk, it is the secondary storage which is very helpful in coming to the point of virtual memory. So each and every memory technology has its own advantage. So this is about the SRAM technology. SRAMs are simply integrated circuits that are memory arrays with usually a single access port that can provide either a read or a write. SRAMs have a fixed access time to any datum, though the read and write access times may differ. SRAMs don't need to refresh, and so the access time is very close to the cycle time. Fourth point, SRAMs typically use 6 to 8 transistors per bit to prevent the information from being disturbed when read. Also, SRAM needs only the minimal power to retain the charge in standby mode. So caches are usually implemented with this SRAM. In the past, if we see most personal computers and server systems used separate SRAM chips for either their primary memory or secondary memory or tertiary caches. But according to this Moore's law, all the levels of caches are integrated onto the processor chip nowadays, and hence the market for the separate SRAM chips has nearly evaporated. Speaking about this DRAM technology, there is a very vast variation between this SRAM technology and DRAM technology because SRAM's caches are implemented with SRAM and main memory are implemented with this DRAM technology. So in a SRAM, as long as the power is applied, the value can be kept indefinitely. In a dynamic RAM, the value kept in a cell is stored as a charge in a capacitor. A single transistor is then used to access the stored charge, either to read the value or to overwrite the charge stored there. In STEM technology, we saw about several transistors that were used to access a single bit. Rather, here using a very single transistor to use a single bit. And that's why this DRAM occupies, DRAM can hold so many bits in its area. Because DRAMs use only a single transistor per bit of storage, they are much denser and cheaper per bit than this SRAM. As this DRAM store the charge in a capacitor, it cannot be kept indefinitely and must periodically be refreshed. And that is why this memory structure is called dynamic as opposed to the static storage in an SRAM cell. So this is about this DRAM technology. To refresh the cell, we merely read its contents and write it back. The charge can be kept for several milliseconds. If every bit had to be read out of the DRAM and then written back individually, we would constantly be refreshing the DRAM, leaving no time for accessing it. Fortunately, DRAMs use a two-level decoding structure, and this allows us to refresh an entire row which shows as a word line with a read cycle followed immediately by a write cycle. So this is the internal organization of this DRAM technology. So modern DRAMs are often organized in banks. If you see here, these are all the banks. So they are organized in banks. Typically, that is four for a specific type, that is DDR3. So each bank consists of a series of rows. Each bank consists of series of rows sending a charge, that is a pre-charge. If you see here, this is the signal PRE. This is the pre-charge. This command opens or closes a bank. A row address is sent with an act, that is this signal, that is the activate, which causes the row to transfer to a buffer. So when the row is in the buffer, it can be transferred by successive column addresses at whatever the width of the DRAM, that is typically of 4, 8 or 16 bits, or by specifying a block transfer and the starting address. Each command as well as block transfers is synchronized with the clock here. So these are all the things that are explained here. If you see here, these are all the buffers, and this is row decoders, and these are all the column decoder. These are all the memory arrays, which we call in modern technology as banks, and these are all the memory controller. This is the bus. Via this bus, we are transferring all the information to the processor. So the two signals very important in this previous memory bank technology is, that is the act, that is activate, and the pre-charge. The role of this activate is nothing but which causes the row to transfer to the buffer, and the role of the pre-charge is that command opens or closes bank. So here we are having the synchronous DRAMs or SDRAMs. So what is the use of this? What is the meaning of the synchronous? In the sense, we need to synchronize something with the help of the clock. Always we are using the clock to synchronize. So if we want to improve some performance, improve the performance of the interface to the processor, or if you want to improve the interface to the processor mechanism, The DRAMs always added the clocks and they are called as synchronous DRAMs or SDRAMs. So what is the advantage of this SDRAMs is that by the use of a clock, it eliminates the time for the memory and the processor to synchronize. So the speed advantage of this synchronous DRAMs, the speed advantage, it has the speed advantage and it comes from the ability that it has that it transfer the bits in a burst without having to specifying the additional address bits. So what happens in the sense, instead of this, the clock transfers the successive bits in a burst. So the fastest version of this synchronous DRAMs is DDR SDRAM, that is the double data rate SDRAM. So the name means data transfers on both the rising as well as on the falling edge of the clock. Thereby we are getting twice as much as bandwidth that depends on the clock rate and the data width. So the best example for this technology, the latest version is DDR4. So what is this DDR4? It is also called as DDR4 3200 DRAM. It can do 3200 million transfers per second, which means it has 1600 megahertz clock. So this is about the clever organization of DRAM. Why the DRAM should be organized as multiple banks, why it should have so many columns, so many rows, it should have buffer. So reading this, coming to this first point, it read or write from multiple banks with each having its own row buffer. So every bank has its own row buffer. Sending an address to several banks permits them all to read or write simultaneously. For example, with 4 banks, there is just one access time and then accesses rotate between the 4 banks to supply 4 times the bandwidth. And this rotating access scheme is called as address interleaving. So this is about this dual inline memory modules. So these are all the memory for servers are commonly sold on small boards. Since the memory for the servers are commonly sold on a very small boards, this is called as dual inline memory modules. Comparing with this personal mobile devices, they use individual DRAMs. Here we are having this memory modules. So this DIMMs typically contain 4 to 16 DRAMs and they are normally organized to be 8 bytes wider for server systems. So this is the memory rank, that is the term we are using for such a subset of chips in a dual inline memory modules. So a dual inline memory module using DDR4 3200 SDRAMs could transfer at 8 into 3200, that is 25,600 megabytes per second. So such DIMMs are named after their bandwidth, that is PZ 25,600. This is about the flash memory. So what is flash memory? Flash memories are the memories which we are using in a day-to-day life personal mobile devices. So flash memory is a type of electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. Unlike the disk and DRAMs, but like other that electrically erasable Chrome technologies, writes can wear out flash memory bits. So what we need to cope up with these limits, most flash products use a controller. So what is the need of this controller in the sense? This controller spread the writes by remapping the blocks that have been written many times with the less written blocks. And this technique is called as wear leveling. So what is wear leveling? Actually, in flash memory, the writes can wear out the flash memory bits. So, in order to cope up with the limits, we are having a flash controller. What is the role of this controller in the sense the controller controls or it spreads the writes by remapping all the blocks that have been written many times to the less trodden blocks. And this is called as wear leveling. Of course, wear leveling it decreases the performance of the flash memory, but without wear leveling, we can't improve the performance of writing into the memory. So flash controllers that perform this wear leveling also performs some important role like mapping out the memory cells that were manufactured incorrectly. And this is about the disk memory. So this disk consists of, this disk is nothing but the magnetic hard disk we are using. So this magnetic hard disk consists of a collection of platters with, with each with two surfaces, and each surface consists of concentric rings called tracks. So each track consists of sectors separated by gaps. If you see here, this is a disk. This consists of platters. This consists of platters in the sense it will be of platters. It will be like array. So each with two surfaces. It has two surfaces, and each surface consists of a concentric rings. These rings are called as tracks, and this is here. The track is like this. So it has some gaps, and the lines that between the gaps are called as sectors. And this is a real-time disk memory. If you see here, this is the platter. So the platter will be arranged like this. This is one thing, and this is another thing, and these both things combined together, they are calling this as platters. And this is the read write head. This read write head is used to read all the informations or to write the all the information on the tracks. So this is about disk characteristics. A track is further divided into sectors. If you see, these are all the sectors. It will be like the sector. So a sector is the smallest unit of disk storage. If we want to visualize this disk platter, then the disk platter will be like this. This is one disk, and this is another disk, and this is another disk. So it goes like this. So again, so these are all the disk platters, and this is called as the disk head. If you see here, this is a sector. If you select a sector, and or if this is the sector, and all the disk in the platter will have the same sector like this. If you select a particular sector, then the group of sectors under these platter, they are called as the cylinders, and this is called as the disk arm. This is the disk arm. This is the track which we have already discussed. So this is the disk operation. This is a single platter view. If you see here, the disk surface spins at a fixed rotational rate. So this disk surface always rotates with a fixed rate, and this is the spindle which always rotates. So if you see, if you visualize like this, the disk is rotating like this. And if you see here, this is about this read write head. Read write head that is attached to end of the arm and flies over the disk surface on thin cushion of air. So it goes like this. So it moves here and there in order to record. So by moving radially, arm can position this read write head over any track. And these are all the terminologies. That is the track, that is one of thousands of concentric circles that makes up the surface of a magnetic disk. And sector, it is one of the segments that make up a track on a magnetic disk. A sector is the smallest amount of information that is read or written on a disk. The seek, the process of positioning a read or write head over the proper track on a disk. What is rotational latency? It is also called as rotational delay. The time required for the desired sector of a disk to rotate under the read write head. Usually, it is assumed to be half the rotation time. So, the last component of a disk access is the transfer time, that is, the time to transfer a block of bits. The transfer time is a function of the sector size, the rotation speed, and the recording density of a track. So it depends on three factors. That is, one is the sector size, and another one is the rotation speed. That is, the rotation speed is the rotational latency is half the rotation speed, and the recording density of a track. So this is the average rotational latency can be given by, that is the 0.5 rotation. If you see, it is assumed to be half the rotation time. It is assumed to be half the rotation time. Hence, we are taking this as 0.5 rotation divided by 5400 rotation per minute if we have assumed like this. So we want to convert this minute into seconds, and this being converted, and after we are getting as 5.6 millisecond as the average rotational latency for a disk that rotates with 5400 RPM. Thank you.